Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be working on a mixed media plaque. I will be using some resin from some new molds that I received, and I was really excited to play with these. We're also going to be using some scrap papers, some deco art paints. We're going to be using some chalky gesso, just a few different things here. The first thing that we're going to do is go ahead and gesso our plaque, which I have already done. We have to always prime our surface before we begin adding all different kinds of wet mediums. The products I just showed you were the eye zinc inks, and we're going to be using those a lot today. Really love those inks. They're really awesome. So I wanted to create this illusion, kind of like this center. And so what we're going to be doing, well, what I'm doing now is actually gathering some pieces just to kind of collage it over to create some texture. And at the end of the day, we never know what we're going to see once the project is over. So it's always a good idea to be safe than sorry, and how fun is it to add layers. So now that I have about the pieces that I want, I'm going to go ahead and start adding some color to my background. Those are Galaxy glitter paints, dazzling metallic paints, as well as some black acrylic. And I'm going to water it down with some water just so that I can kind of, apply it as thick or as heavy as I like as I go. And I'm not really trying to achieve so much of a pattern as more as I'm trying to achieve the right kind of coverage. So I'm going to be blending a little bit of the black acrylic with a little bit of the rich espresso metallic, and just seeing kind of what I like. My process usually goes through a lot of different changes, which is fine. You kind of gotta go with your flow, and that's usually what I tend to do whenever I create. I have to kind of gauge and see, how much space do I need to cover, because there's really no point in covering the entire surface if most of it is going to be covered. But you definitely want to make sure that you cover the needed area for sure. So now that it's dry, I'm trying to see what kind of pattern I want. I definitely want some of this cobblestone stamping going all around the edges, and I believe that this is a Bow Bunny stamp. And basically I used this really light kind of gray just to kind of see if I liked the way that it looked against the brown. I decided that I wanted something brighter, so I went ahead and grabbed me some chalky gesso and used the stamp to basically add some texture all around the framing. Make sure that you clean your stamp as soon as it's done. And if you forget, like I tend to, then just leave it in some soapy water. Usually that'll do the job for you. And as you're gonna see, I ended up repeating some of these process a couple different times, just to keep adding more layers and more layers and more layers. It's always good to just, add as much as you possibly can or you possibly feel inclined to. For this one, I wanted there to be a lot going on. And even though towards the end of the process you don't see most of that, you still get to see it when you have it up close, and it's so amazing. So I'm using a Deco Arts Galaxy Glitter Paint to just kind of add a few little, just areas of color and sparkle. And I also wanted to test out this nuclear gesso that I purchased on Amazon by Mart. And it's a clear textured gesso, and it says premium on it. And I was really hoping that it was going to be clear, but as you guys are going to see, it didn't dry as clear as I would like, but it could have just been user error, so I'll have to give it another go and see how that kind of works out. So as you guys can see, I'm just kind of picking random spots, all around the framing. I think that looks so nice. Um, I really love how it came out, but I could have also seen it going in this direction and staying in this direction, because this was looking so beautiful to me as it was coming together. I really loved it. And the white, against the brown and the dark areas, I mean, it just looks so nice. But maybe for another time, for another project. So again, just kind of adding it in different areas. And now I'm using a green. Let me see. The color that I'm using right now was extraterrestrial green. And the color that I was using previously was Let me see. Pink Cosmos. I have all the products still laying out in front of me. Okay. So now that I have most of my surface basically how I want it, now it's time to go ahead and glue this baby down. So I just use regular tacky glue to do this, but you can use Decoupage or whatever kind of glue you have available. I knew that I was going to be adding other layers on top of this, including a layer of clear gesso, so I wasn't really too worried about it. But I did have a little bit of a hard time with the glue, as tends to be our story with these tacky glues because they do dry up. So, but I do get it. I do get it. Right there, that looks like it can go in so many different directions. But I hope you guys enjoy what I actually end up turning into. So now that I've got the glue working, I just go ahead and reinforce some of the edges and make sure that I have everything glued down nicely. Even though I am going to be applying other coats over this. So here's where the clear gesso comes into play. And I just basically wanted to seal that paper because I knew that I was going to be adding other layers and I just didn't want the paper to start tearing apart. But I didn't want to lose everything that I had done in the background. Also, I almost forgot to add my little strips. So while I have this gesso here, I decided, you know what, let's add these little strips in and just, just create adding more layers. You never know what's going to show. And that's what's awesome about mixed media. Because even as I'm creating this, the outcome was like a total wow to me. I was not expecting it to turn out as awesome as it did. So I'm just adding more green now. I'm going back over it. As you guys can see, there's kind of like a milky kind of residue that lingered behind. So it didn't dry all the way clear. And I hit it with the heat tool as well as let it dry for quite a while. And that's basically what I got. So I'm not sure if it's mixing with something that I already have on there because that could be it too. But I'll have to check and do another run with it. But as of right now, it's not clear. It's close to clear, but it's not clear. Not all the way. All right, so now we're gonna start working, I believe, on our resin pieces. No, we're not yet. That's coming up. So I took some of this blue, and the color that I used is turquoise blue, and it's a Deco acrylic. And basically, I watered that down. I also used some golds and did some stamping with some stars. And you do actually see some of the stars when you have it, having it up close. You can see through it. So there's a lot of areas that are clear because of the process that it went through. So you can definitely see the stars in a lot of areas. And I did that with gold paint, and it has a nice little shimmer to them. So I watered this down because my original idea was to kind of, paint the whole thing and do most of it in acrylic. But as I started seeing just how opaque it was, I decided that I wanted to go in a different direction. So I switched to sprays. And I'm really happy that I did that because it took a whole different turn. And you guys are going to see what I mean. I really like the effects of splashing it on. And these are the eye zinc sprays by Seth Apter. These are dye-based inks, dye-based sprays, and basically they react to water, but they don't react to alcohol from what I've noticed. I also used the Dina Wakley sprays, the gloss sprays, and these do have a reaction to alcohol, so I definitely use that to my advantage. And you guys are going to see me sprinkle some of that into this as well. And you're going to see me do that throughout the whole process. So that little bottle that I end up pulling out is like a tiny little bottle. That's alcohol in that bottle. So now we're going to just dry it a little bit. And I left this part in even though I removed for most of the video just so that you guys can kind of see what happens when you start kind of drying these layers up. And again, these are very different inks. This is a glossy acrylic spray, which is the Dina Wakley, and as I said before, the Seth Apter is a dye-based spray. So they do have different reactions. They do have different properties, and it's super cool to see how they mix together. I love using these two inks together. So now I'm just gonna go back in and darken some of the areas back up, because I did lose a lot of that with you know, just the overspraying, but I didn't want to remove none of the overspraying because I think it came out so nice. And I really like the fluidity that it adds to the whole piece, because that's what this is about. So as I mentioned earlier, you know, you end up kind of repeating some of the steps, you know, throughout everything, because you end up losing some of it, and some of it you definitely want to bring it back in because it just adds that contrast, it adds that dimension, those layers become more visible. So this is definitely something that I needed to do. So I basically took advantage of the time and also kind of painted around all of the edges with just that brown. I wanted it to have a really earthy, you know, feel to it. So what do you guys think about these sprays? Have you tried them? And if so, have you done something similar to that mix of, you know, dropping the sprays and the water and the alcohol into them to see what kind of effects you get? To me, it looks a lot like when you play with the alcohols. So I've never really done that like that. So this is really, really fun because it's so similar to it. And I think if you use some tools, you could definitely manipulate it. So here I'm bringing back some of the white into it with, again, the cobblestone stamp by Bo Bunny. And I'm using some chalky gesso, and all I do is basically brush it really, really thin, and then just pick it up with the stamp, and wherever it you know, wherever it catches, it catches. So now we're going to start working on the resin pieces. The koi fish is a mold that I just received from AliExpress, so if you want to see that, you can go ahead and check that out. I will try to leave a link to that down below, or link it maybe above, so be on the lookout for that. And the other, the corals are actually from another mold. I forget what the name is of that mold at the moment. And the little face as well. I think it's Sculpey, the little face, if I'm not mistaken. So I gave them a coat of clear gesso and just kind of dried them just to, you know, make sure that I have a little bit of grip on the surface, because the gesso, the resin that I use is super glossy. And I'm gonna go ahead and just add some inks to them, and that's how I'm gonna go and create the whole thing. So with the face, what I wanted to do was make it look like she's kind of emerging out of the water. And she's doing like this slow kind of process of emerging out. So I sprayed her face with the blue first, to just kind of get that process going. And the rest of the spraying of her face I'm going to do on the surface, because I want there to be some kind of spillage. And I want it to be that marble effect that I'm getting in the background, but with the colors that are basically coming off of her face to help it blend a little bit more with the background. And that is the Dina Wakley spray that I'm using. And again, here I'm going to go and use the alcohol technique to my advantage. And it's just repeating a lot of different layers until you get the look just right. Different colors and shades appeal to different people, so just go with what feels right to you. Yeah, I wanted it to look like she's kind of splitting the water in two as she's kind of like emerging out. So I wanted to get some kind of effects right along that middle section of the plaque. And just adding different inks just to get the color combination that I'm looking for. Or at least the blend that kind of suits the whole, you know, the whole style of it. So now we're going to go ahead and pull some Deco Art acrylic sprays, as well as more of the Seth Apters and the Dina Wakley. So basically I did the trio here with this one. I wanted it to have a little bit of pastelish kind of color to it, but I wanted it to have like a lot of different layers to it as well. So we did a little bit of all the different paints. Again, one of them is glossy, the other one is dye based, and the other one is just regular acrylic spray. And just to give them a little something something, I wanted to add a little bit of the sparkle paint all on the edges, and I'm using again the pink Cosmos to do that. I still wasn't 100% satisfied with them, so I am going to get them to just go a little darker for me. And I'm doing that by adding some of the Seth Apter in spring green. Okay, now while I let those dry, I'm going to start working on my fishes. And again, this is almost like working with alcohol inks. That's basically what it felt like to me. Very watercolor-ish, um, which I really liked. And I really love how these came out, you guys. Tell me what you think about these fish. Like, honestly, I love them. I think they came out so super cool. And I had no idea what I was going to do with them. So I'm going to call these my rainbow fish, my rainbow koi fish. Because that's basically what I do. I add every single color basically to this. But I think it came out really nice at the end. And you'll get to see a little bit of a close-up once they're painted. And again, that's the little blue bottle that I just keep some alcohol handy so that I can spray over some of these inks when I'm using them. It helps to make the colors blend for some of them when they're reactive to it. For the Dina Wakley, it kind of repels the ink as opposed to bring the color together. So for the Dina Wakley, that one's good to create like some of that marbly effect that you see on the plaque. That was created by adding the alcohol to the Dina Wakley sprays once you've sprayed them. But make sure that you have them, you kind of spray them over a wet surface, something that's already wet. So maybe with some water or maybe with some other acrylic colors or some other sprays, and then you add the color over it, and then it'll kind of separate the layers and you'll get to see the layers that are in the bottom. Because again, these two sprays don't really mix well with each other. But when you add something that kind of dissolves it, then it helps them to blend. Look at my rainbow fish, you guys. I know you can't really see it too well because of the mess underneath, but oh my goodness. I'm so loving how these rainbow fish are coming out. So that you get to see it a little bit better. I'm trying to kind of zoom it in and just make it so that you guys can really see. But the colors all blended so nicely. I really, really love the effects and how they came out. So now I'm going to add a little bit of contrast by going into it and just adding some black little splotches here and there. Most of the koi fish pictures that I've seen have some kind of black in them or some kind of white in them. So I decided to add a little bit of both, kind of the yin and the yang, which is kind of like what this plaque represents in a way. Also, it could be for a Pisces because they do have the two fishes, basically in the same way that the Pisces symbol is. But this is not a Pisces plaque, you guys. But it can be if you wanted it to be. If you wanted to create something similar, it can totally be. So basically, for a little storyline, because the video is coming to an end real soon, the rest of the things that I'm going to basically do, and I'm sorry that bottle's in the way. I'm going to move that bottle out of the way. And then my dog is barking in the background as well. I didn't even notice. But I move it. There we go. I'm going to continue to basically just keep adding you know, some of these inks to the fish. They're almost about done. I just want to kind of blend some of that black that I added in the front because it was a little too dark, and I just wanted to make sure that, you know, it wasn't too overpowering. So I just wanted to lighten them up and, you know, just kind of give them a little bit of pop. And I think I achieved that. They look really, really nice. I'm gonna have to try to see if I can find a big mold for a fish like this so that I can paint two big ones like that. And I decided to add some eyes to them, but I ended up putting them in black so you don't really see them. I love them. They came out so super cute, you guys. What do you think? I think they came out really, really nice. And the black just like adds that perfect little touch to them. It's not too much. It's kind of like just right. And while it's still wet, you know, I'm adding the white into that again, trying to achieve a little bit of blendability, even though I want the color to still be really bold. I do want it to blend just a smidge. And the brushes that I'm using, if you're interested, are actually detail brushes that I found on Amazon. And it's a really nice set. It's got, I think, about 10 brushes. They just don't have any real branding to them, you guys. That's why I can't tell you what the name is. But if you're looking for something similar, if you search detail brushes, you might find them. You'll recognize them by the picture. Alright, you guys, so we have our fishes. Yay! But that's not enough, you guys. Of course, it's not enough. So now what we're going to do is add a little bit of bling. So while I'm adding that, let me go ahead and tell you guys a little bit of the story for this. So basically, the title is We Meet in the Middle. And it has to do with the two koi fishes obviously coming to meet this sea goddess, I'm going to say, that is emerging from the deep, right? So the deeper the depth of the ponds, I don't know how deep the pond is before it turns into a lake, but you guys get the drift, right? You get the drift. So that's basically the storyline for this whole plaque. Originally, I was going to use words and put like a quote in the center, but as I was looking through the resin pieces, I saw the face and it's kind of missing a little bit on the side. So I was like, you know what, this is perfect. Instead of kind of, you know, not using it, let me use it for this so that it can look like she's emerging so you don't see her whole entire face, which is basically what would happen if it was coming up from under the water. So I think it all kind of played really nicely with each other. So again, using my tacky glue, I am going to be using triple thick over this whole entire piece because I wanted to, again, add to that illusion, add another layer of like a glossy, really, really super highly glossy finish. And I wanted it to look like water, so I didn't spread the gloss everywhere. I just kind of allowed it to flow in different directions that it wanted to flow, and it didn't cover the entire surface, but I think it looks super amazing even with that. And as I showed you guys at the beginning of the video, I do have some tiny little beads that I'm going to be mixing with uh, chalky finish gesso. And I'm going to mix that with the white chalky gesso, and I'm going to use it as is. And I'm going to put that around the face and in just different parts of the canvas. I could have used them in green because it would have matched, but I wanted that boldness of the white because I felt like the white got lost. And kind of like, you know, it reminded me of like foam, and since she's kind of coming up, you know, I'm not sure if she would have foam coming up, but I thought it would look cool and add a nice little element to it. So it kind of reminds me of bubbles, like sea foam. I'm not sure if that's how it's called, but yeah, kind of like that, what brushes up against the waves. And at the end of the day, this is just a scope. We don't know how big or how small this really is. This is just the perspective that we're seeing it now. But we're talking imagination wise. So this can be like a giant, these can be giant koi fishes. She can be a giant sea goddess, like we don't know. I used every little bit of this because I just thought that it just looked so nice against the greens and the blues and just the vibrancy of the whole picture. I just think it brought it up to a whole new level. And adding the triple thick over it, and once it's dried, it's completely see-through, and it's so thick in some areas, and some areas it's so thin. It really adds like this whole different dimension of just fluidity, and I really love how it looks. And again, the parts that are dry kind of like has this contrast between the glossy and the matte finish, and it just looks super nice. That came out really bright. I'm really happy with this piece. So now we're gonna use a triple thick. Now you want to let triple thick dry for at least 8 hours, if not longer. Once, depending on how much you used, once you finish. So don't poke at it. If you have a little bubble, try to catch them quick. I would recommend that you use a heat tool, like as soon as you have your layer down, as much as you want, or a torch, and just kind of go over it a little bit, kind of like you would with resin, very lightly, and just kind of pop, most of those air bubbles right out. And basically I believe I did like two layers of this, or I went back into it and added more, and it starts to dry really fast, you guys. So I kind of allowed it to dry a little bit, and then I went over it again so that I can have that look of layers of kind of water rolling on top of water. And you can really see that when you have the piece in your hands, more so that you can see it on the camera. But you can definitely see that high gloss that triple thick gives to the piece. And you can find triple thick in many different brands. You just have to look up triple thick. Triple thick is the name of the medium, but there are many different companies. So while this is kind of semi-wet, I went ahead and grabbed some glitter, and I grabbed one that's like a copperish kind of color, a blue color, and then a little bit of like this glassy kind of see-through iridescent type of glitter. So I'm just sprinkling that in a few different places. I'm going to heat set it a little bit, and I believe that that'll be it for this video. So you guys, I want to thank you so much if you've made it this far. You are awesome. Don't forget to hit that thumbs up. If you have not subscribed to my channel, please do so. There are definitely more projects like this on their way. And here we go, you guys. Thanks so much for your time. I'll catch you on the next one. Bye.